Hello, I'm Shannon Gregory from Microcell Sciences, and today we're going to talk about the understanding the difficulties with Lyme disease. There is a lot of confusion about Lyme disease, about the ticks, about the pathology of the Lyme disease, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to first of all talk a little bit about something that is not being recognized as much as it should be recognized right now with COVID going on. And this is where we would like to be seeing a lot more coming out in regards to Lyme disease. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the tick aspect, first of all, because we are getting to a point where ticks are going to be much more out there. We're all starting to warm up and so on, so we're all starting to go out. And even just last week alone, I had 4 emails of individuals getting a tick bite. So first of all, I want to give you a few fun facts. I don't know if ticks can be fun, but a few facts about ticks. So first of all, there's 2 different kinds of ticks. And ticks aren't the only thing that carry Lyme disease. We are seeing Lyme disease come from mosquitoes. We're seeing some Lyme disease coming from when you're bitten by a jellyfish or a man of war, which are specific types of fish that are in the ocean. We're seeing them from any vectors. And what a vector is it is something that passes the blood barrier. Okay, so something that bites you and crosses over the blood barrier. So there's 2 different types of ticks. There's a deer tick and a dog tick. What's fascinating about ticks is they're actually born with 6 legs, but ticks actually have 8 legs. You will always know that it's a tick because you will see that it has 8 legs and a very, very pointy little face. Deer ticks has 3 host stages. This is pretty crazy, where ticks will actually go through 3 stages in their summer life cycle. And those 3 stages, they actually bite and feed on different animals. So stage 1, they may feed on a rat. Stage 2, they may feed on a rabbit. And stage 3, they may look for more of a deer. They're that smart. They're actually predators as well, where they sit in long grass, they sit in our trees and things like that. And that's why you hear about a lot of ticks falling from trees into people's hair and things like that, because what they actually do is they are actual predators. They're waiting for their next opportunity to bite. So it's pretty crazy what they can do. They ambush the predators and kind of wait in tall grass for you to walk by, and then they know that they can grab onto you and bite from that point. There's a lot of talk about what type of ticks carry Lyme, and we're seeing the most amount in deer ticks. Dog and deer ticks do carry what we call co-infections, okay? And these co-infections are the 3 Bs. What does that mean? Okay, and this is where I wanted to do at the Facebook Live of understanding Lyme, because people just know it as Lyme disease. There's so much more to it than just Lyme disease. When a tick bites, there's co-infections that go along with it. And what that means is there's different bacteriums and parasites that come along with a tick bite. The 3 Bs that I will often look for in live blood is Borrelia, which is another name, that's the pathology name for Lyme disease. Babesia, which is a parasite / bacteria that enters through the red blood, enters through the skin to find the red blood cell and lives intercellularly in the red blood cell, which means it lives inside your actual red blood cell. Then we have Bartonella. Bartonella can be actually given by numerous things. It is seen in a lot of animals, a lot of cats. It is an infection that definitely you could see some animals carry and so on and so forth. So when a tick actually bites you, it gets engorged by 10 times its actual size. And it can sit and feed on you for up to a week, which is pretty crazy. This is why it likes to fall from trees into your hair and things like that, because it can actually feed and you don't know. When it bites you, it will give a form of an anesthesia, a freezing, so that what happens is you can't feel it biting and entering and so much. So they say it generally, after a tick bites you, it takes 36 hours for it to infect you. I beg to differ. These are things where, on a holistic side of things to a Western medicine side of things, there's a huge difference. And I'm seeing a lot of my followers on here. Hi, some of my clients that see me regularly. So hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate that. But I wanted to, and so when we go back to that tick, Western medicine feels it takes 36 hours for it to infect. No. What we do find is Lyme can be transmitted in 16 hours. Now you might go, oh my God, how would a tick ever be on me for that long? And that's because ticks are now, some of them are even the size of a tip of a pin, which is a nymph tick. And a lot of the nymph ticks carry Babesia. Babesia is a pathogen that I see a lot in the live blood, because we're seeing a lot more even from traveling and things like that. And they can give us a lot of Lyme symptoms. Now, what happens with the ticks, once they bite, the salivary glands of the tick, they're infected. And they're infected with these co-infections. So once they break the skin barrier, it enters the bloodstream, and we have these numerous infections that unfortunately can enter. Now, what is jaw-dropping is 2 different kinds of viruses and Babesia, which we're discussing, can only take 15 minutes to contract this. So a very, very minute bite can definitely give you co-infections. And anybody who's seen me in live cell knows how passionate I do get about looking at the blood, how excited I get when I see some of these pathogens in the blood. And that's because I'm able to put these puzzle pieces together of things that Western medicine can't find. And this is what makes this so interesting, of why I wanted to do a live about understanding Lyme. So these ticks carry numerous co-infections, Babesia being one, Bartonella being one. Coccicle is a virus, which is also known as foot and mouth. EBV, which is Epstein-Barr virus. And what Epstein-Barr virus is, it's what mono was when we were kids. But a lot of, unfortunately, ticks and things like that, we see them EBV, we see that it activates EBV, which is a virus in the system. Echo is another virus I see quite frequently come up, and we're going to talk about how do we find these viruses? What are the diagnostics out there? Because unfortunately, live blood cell, what I do, isn't a diagnostic tool. We're amazing at guiding you in the right direction of where we could go with this and what we're seeing intercellularly and pathogen-wise, but we're not able to do diagnostics that your family doctor will give you antibiotics for. There is certainly doctors that refer to my company that uses us as a diagnostic, but in the big picture, we're not. So a few other that we do see is Borrelia, which is what Lyme disease is. Ehrlichia is another immune type of bacterium and / parasite that we will see in live cell and that we get from ticks. So what is Lyme? Lyme is Borrelia. It is an actual little tiny spirochete. And what does that look like? It literally looks like a bouncing spring. Okay, so when I'm looking for it in the live blood, it's moving around the plasma and it literally looks like a spring. Borrelia is really, really difficult to find. And that's where the ins and outs of Lyme disease gets really complicated, because in the big picture, Western medicine doesn't have necessarily the technology or the right way of testing to find Borrelia, because it hides so unbelievably beautifully, quite frankly. And this is the issue of why people will walk around with Lyme disease for so many years and they're told it's fibromyalgia, they're told it's lupus, and so on and so forth. And it's quite shocking how many clients come to me with a diagnostic of fibromyalgia. That is the biggest one I see. Now, what are symptoms of having Lyme disease? What are symptoms of some of these pathogens that we see? Because some of you people that are watching are questioning whether you have Lyme disease because you've been told you have fibromyalgia or so on. So some of the indications of having Lyme disease, an enormous amount of fatigue. Now, a lot of us just walk around having fatigue, muscle joint pain, swelling of lymph nodes. Our lymph nodes are in our throat area, along the back of our neck, under our underarms, all around our breast area, in our stomach area, down our legs. And our lymph system's job is to help clean the body of pathogens. Well, sometimes what happens is that poor lymph system has to work so terribly hard that it becomes swollen, that it becomes on overload. And this is something that myself and my technicians will be looking for, is how overworked is your lymphatic system. Another common symptom is flu-like symptom, chills, fevers, and of course having the telltale bullseye bullseye rash, which we're going to talk about a little bit more down the road. Only 80% of the individuals that get bitten by a tick shows the bullseye rash. And probably a lot of the individuals that are even watching today, because I know a lot of the individuals, they didn't even have a rash. They didn't even have any bullseye to enable them to see that they may have Lyme entered. A lot of symptoms as well, before I kind of move away from the symptoms of Borrelia, is foggy brain. We see a lot of MRIs, which are when they go and they do kind of a scan of your whole body, when they're looking for, certain issues, they will do a scan and they'll be looking to see, are we seeing lesions on the brain? We have had numerous clients that have had lesions on the brain, which Borrelia has in turn created. So it's really interesting what our immune system will do with this, really interesting what our body will do. And these symptoms are cues that we're having a pathogen embedding into our muscles, embedding into our body. And that's what Borrelia does. That little pathogen, which literally is so microscopic, it's very, very difficult to see, even in live cell. However, we run very, very high-end equipment. My equipment that I run is 4K. And this is why, again, if anybody here who's watching has seen me, I can zoom in very, very deep into that red blood cell or into the actual plasma to see, are we seeing the spirochetes coming out? So what we're looking for is these little slinky type of spirochetes moving throughout the plasma. Sometimes we do often see the spirochetes living inside the red blood cells, which is a beautiful little spot for that spirochete, that Borrelia, Lyme disease, to be living inside, because it can hide beautifully from the immune system when it's hidden inside these red blood cells. So imagine we have this circle, we've got our red blood cell, because our red blood cell is always circular and concave, and inside that red blood cell, or with the concave around it, you have a pathogen living inside. So you've got your immune moving along in that plasma, and unfortunately it just cannot see the Babesia or the Borrelia because it's living inside those cells. And this is what makes it so difficult to find, so difficult for Western medicine to really pinpoint Lyme disease. And I don't really see it getting any better in the next 5 or 10 years. Yes, there's going to be apparently vaccinations. Yes, there's going to be other type of things that I've seen research in regards to this, but they can't even at this point pinpoint Lyme in people's blood using public health, which is our Canadian public health. And this is a huge problem. So how do they expect to, come up with different antibiotics, things like that are effective against this when they can't even figure out people having the actual pathogen? So in Lyme disease, there's 3 stages of it, okay? There's the early localized, which is within the first little bit of of getting an unfortunate bite from whether it being a black fly, a spider, a tick, a mosquito, even from travel, different type of bugs. I have numerous clients that, live in Thailand, live in Africa, things like that, because again, I deal with a lot of parasites and things like that. And I have a lot of people that live in foreign countries that battle parasites and so on. But of course, also get tick bites and so on and so forth. So the 3 stages of Lyme is early localized, and that's when it first enters the body. Now, when Lyme first enters the body, this is imperative, and this is what I wanted to do a major, I'm just reading some of the notes there. So when you're bitten with the Lyme, or when you're bitten with the tick, what happens is you will get a bullseye, okay? Now, what is not known and not told enough is anybody bitten by a tick needs to go to a walk-in clinic. I don't care if it's a deer tick. I don't care if it's a dog tick. I want you to go to a walk-in clinic, and I want you to antibiotics for that tick bite. Because even though you may not show the telltale bullseye that you would see from something that would carry Lyme, because what happens is you get that bullseye rash when Lyme or Borrelia has entered your bloodstream. You won't get that bullseye rash, and only 80% of people get that rash. And that's where, this is where it gets lost in our public health. So the second stage is when you start finding symptoms of Lyme. You start feeling the aches and pains. You start having foggy brain. You start really not being able to close your hands or feeling fatigue, literally to the point where you can't get out of bed. And we've seen a lot about Justin Bieber battling his Lyme disease where he can't get out of bed. And that's the EBV factor of it. That's the Epstein-Barr virus that's attacking the body and not enabling him to get out of bed. So there is a sea of ignorance when, unfortunately, it comes down to what happens once we've had a tick bite. So I want you to go to that walk-in clinic. I don't care if you scream or have to cry to get antibiotics, but you need to get antibiotics. And anybody that's watching me right now knows this as a factor, because I can see some of the clients that are watching this are ones that have even run antibiotics. And even if you've caught this too late, the antibiotics can't get all the Borrelia, because the Borrelia, the Lyme disease, divides. And again, this is when Lyme gets complicated, because understanding the pathology of Lyme and the co-infections, Western medicine has incredible denial from the doctors. And that's because there is confusion when it comes to a tick bite. There is confusion when it comes to Lyme disease. And that's where getting them to give you antibiotics after having a tick bite is ridiculous. You should be running, hopefully, amoxicillin for children. Doxycycline would be great for adults. Of course, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not able to prescribe these things, but these are what's often recommended from Western medicine. But a lot of these doctors have huge denial, and there's a reasoning for the denial, okay? And this is the huge thing about Lyme. This is the huge thing about what I do for a living. In live blood, okay, the issue is of why Western medicine doesn't always recognize Lyme and looking at the microbiology of the blood live is because they have been taught that the blood is sterile. And what that means is that these bacteria, these pathogens, these type of viruses can't be living in our bloodstream often at a later date or later stages. And they believe that this cannot be creating symptoms because our blood and our urine should actually be sterile. It's not. Anybody who's in this video watching knows that the blood isn't sterile because they've seen me, and I have taught you otherwise at the fact that the blood isn't sterile anymore. We are seeing way too much of our environment impacting our body. And this is why we have such brutal denial with Western medicine, is because Borrelia, Lyme disease pathogens are microbiology level, okay? Which means you have to look deep into the bloodstream to really be able to see this in the bloodstream. So some of the issues with Borrelia is it embeds in our ligaments, our tendons, our bones, our brains, our eyes, and even our scar tissue. It is really persistent and really hard to track. And sometimes even at the fact where public health will run diagnostics to try and see if people have Lyme disease, the shocking number of 90% comes back negative. So what we do is I run a chronic care clinic with Dr. Jane Gaynor at Still Dynamics here in Oakville. Microcell Sciences, my company, has 10 locations running from Stony Creek all the way to Ajax, in which all of my technicians are trained how to look and screen for the possibility of Lyme disease, EBV, Babesia, so on and so forth, understanding that we can't say for sure it's there, but we can certainly guide you in the right directions, or run an Armin test. So let's talk about the diagnostics that are out there for people that have Lyme, or we're questioning whether we're seeing Lyme in the blood. So what we do at our chronic care clinic is we work on major health issues such as lung issues, such as joint issues. Lyme disease is our biggest one that comes in because Dr. Jane Gaynor and I, we focus on chronic infections. So we will see people come in with, a plethora of things written on their intake form, and it's incredible how we'll be looking at the blood not being sterile, and they have an overload of bacteria, an overload of what we call pleomorphic bacteria. Okay, and that's bacteria that is dividing. That's bacteria that unfortunately is creating tracks in your blood and creating more symptoms, embedding deeper into your muscles, deeper into numerous things in your body. And this is what creates a lot of our testing issues. So some of the testing out there is our chronic care clinic can run what we call Armin testing. Okay, and Armin testing is an incredible test by Germany that we can give you a requisition and get diagnostics for Lyme. So the incredible thing about what I do is I can look at your blood and go, okay, I think I'm seeing this, 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 and this. I can run Armin tests to line up to prove the pathogens that I'm seeing. And that's why as my company, we have over 60 doctors, MDs, and naturopathic doctors that do refer to our blood lab to screen to see if we need to run some of the more expensive tests. Armin test will run you about $800 to $1,000 for really a pretty straightforward tick test. This will enable us to look for Borrelia, look for Babesia, numerous other co-infections from a tick bite. And I strongly suggest anybody that's had a tick bite to email me, and I can get them set up of having the Armin test done and then seeing me for a visit as well. There's another form of testing called IGeneX. IGeneX is a California testing, and IGeneX does band testing. I personally like Armin testing better because it does test the variety. And amazing enough, Armin is actually testing COVID as well. They sent an email out saying that they're able to soon be testing for COVID and so on. The Lyme testing in Canada that public health does, that's covered under our OHIP, is a two-tier serology testing. That's our standard test in Canada. And that's the one that 90% of the time it does come up, unfortunately, that it comes up negative. And then when I look at people, they say, oh, well, I've had the Lyme test done through public health, and I'm seeing a whole bunch of different pathogens. They've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. They've been diagnosed with, chronic fatigue, things like that. And I'm seeing a plethora of possible indications that they have had a vector bite. Okay, and I use the word vector because those are the pathogens that unfortunately are carrying these type of bacteriums or parasites that can cross the blood barrier. So the difficulty ultimately is with Lyme is the way our Western medicine tests for Lyme. And that's the two-stage serology. The first stage of serology, and a lot of the time what they're doing is they're separating they're centrifuging it, which is this big spinning machine, and they separate the plasma and the red blood cells, and then they send it out for the pathology. But the issue is with Borrelia is sometimes it takes me 3, 4, 5 blood samples or blood smears for me to actually see it. Sometimes I need that slides that I'm taking to go what we call pleomorphic. I need it to sit there for a matter of a half hour so the blood, so the bacteriums and things like that start freaking out, and that's literally what they do because I've taken it out of the body, I've taken the oxygen out, I've got the immune system freaking out, and what happens is the Borrelia then begins to freak out. And it comes out of the cells, it comes out of the muscles, it comes out of that. So it's incredible after letting this sample sit to what I'm going to see in actual live blood. So every appointment is different in live cell because I have no idea. My technicians have no idea. You could write a list of things showing what symptoms of what you have. And our mind is going and we're saying, maybe they have yeast, maybe they're seeing a bunch of different bacterial forms because there's numerous different bacteria forms, which we're going to walk you through the microbiology of the bacteriums of what we're seeing in live cell. Okay. And this is where it's eye-opening when we even look at the blood, because all of a sudden we're moving through and we're seeing the possibilities of Bartonella. Okay, and Bartonella is a bacteria that, again, is really, really difficult to see. It's seen more inside the red blood cells, and it can also be given by cats, infection, a cat scratch, things like that. So even though I'm seeing Bartonella, sometimes it doesn't always come from a vector, meaning an insect or something that crosses the blood barrier. So I wanted to open this up to any questions people have in regards to live blood, Lyme disease, any questions people have in regards to Lyme, because it's such a crazy thing that there's so many different type of talks out there in regards to Lyme, and it's hard to know where to kind of veer yourself. There's an amazing Lyme group that I'm part of called Lyme. They have incredible information. The people that run it are superb. They have very strict rules and practice, so you're not being sold stuff. You're not. It's just a lot of informative information in regards to all of these pathogens that I'm talking about. Also following me, I'm always posting new and exciting experiments I'm doing, or new and exciting blood smears that I see of people from a day-to-day basis. And then when I run the Armin test and get the diagnostics back from Germany, it's incredible how everything lines up. of what I'm seeing and what Germany's saying. So I wanted to open this up to any questions that anybody has. If you would like to book in to see me, I'm certainly booking appointments. However, I'm booking into June right now because I just don't know what's going to happen with COVID. But certainly PM me if you want to book in to see me for a follow-up visit, which is very, very important to track your Lyme disease, to track your pathogens, because it doesn't mean if you have the co-infections that it's Lyme. You can have just the co-infections and not the Lyme disease. Okay, so that's something huge that we are looking at in LiveCell. So please feel free to ask any questions. I'll leave this kind of open, and then PM me for any other questions, or if you want to book in to see me or book in to see any of my technicians.